Greg, the question of human free will is an important one. It comes up in science because of the deterministic atoms in our neurons just firing off if there's no spirit and no soul, purely science. In the area of theology, we have a preordained God's knowledge, and so there's many different strands of human knowledge which seems to say that free will is an illusion. Do I have free will?
I believe you do. I think I have free will. Look, you can't dispute the fact that we've learned a lot about neurology and a lot about genetics and a lot of sociology that strongly suggests that we are significantly determined, at least strongly influenced by our environment, by our genes, and by our neurological wiring. Having said all that, I would argue that the core intuition of me as a person is that I have say-so. I have the power to choose otherwise. I can right now raise my hand or not. Fundamental to my very experience of me being me is that within the boundaries of my genetic and social and neurological conditioning, I have some free choice. And it's only because of that I am able to take responsibility for my actions and hold others responsible. Our very sense of ethics and moral responsibility is contingent upon a person being able to act other than they in fact act. If you can prove in a court of law that a person could not have acted differently, then that person would not be held guilty. So I think we need to balance these two things. Yes, there's strong influences, but it doesn't totally determine us.
Your argument, however helpful to appreciate free will, doesn't hold water in terms of what it actually is, because what the result is that we need free will in order to judge moral standards is true. I grant you that. But that doesn't mean that that's the way it is. That may be the way you want it, but that has no influence on the way it really is.
Sure, but the way we experience the world is certainly an important data to take into consideration when we're coming up with any kind of worldview. The purpose of a theory, and that's what determinism is a theory, the purpose of any theory is to explain the data that we experience. So I'm offering up the experience of free will and the experience of moral responsibility, and to explain it away is not to explain it.
The data,
it has to be taken seriously.
The basic data of this world is that the earth is still and the sun revolves around it. Just look up and see it. But our perception is a pre-scientific one. But once we understand how the brain works and how neurons communicate with each other, the fact that you wanted to raise your hand before and decided to do it or didn't, that was just some individual sequence of neurons that just happened to go one way rather than another.
So that argument would work if it could be shown that our experience of freedom and moral responsibility is strictly phenomenological, which means it's just an appearance. And I've never seen any arguments that show that our genes or social environment or neurons are utterly determinative of who we are, and therefore that our experience of freedom is simply phenomenological. Yes, we're strongly conditioned, but it hasn't convinced me that my experience is in fact off. Not only that, but I would argue that our experience of moral responsibility and our experience of being able to choose differently, that it is more foundational to us as a datum of experience than our experience of the earth standing still. It has more than an appearance quality to it. It's intrinsic to who we are. And therefore, it would take a lot more evidence to undermine it. But I want to say one other thing, because this is, I think, one of the strongest arguments. If determinism is true, I would argue, if determinism is true, then the statement determinism is true can't possibly be true. Because if determinism is true, if physical determinism is true, then everything I'm saying right now is simply a chemical reaction. And chemical reactions can't be true or false. What I'm saying right now would have the same cognitive value as a burp. It's just a lot more complex.
I'm not sure of that argument, but let me ask this. Do you need some non-physical factor, a soul, a spirit, call it what you will, in order to convert the apparent determinism of the physical world into your free will?
Maybe not. The verdict's still out on this one. With complexity theory, there's, or emergent property theories, there are some who are arguing now that it seems to be in the nature of certain dynamic systems that they can produce characteristics that aren't found in any of the parts, with a certain organization and complexity. So it could be that free will is something like consciousness that arises out of physical processes when they're organized in certain very complex designed ways. So I don't need to be a dualist where I hold that the spirit and the body are two radically different things in order to hold to free will. Having said all that, I am a dualist, and I think that's the easiest way to hold to free will.